Hello, my name is Caden Laptet, and thank you for joining me today for my TED Talk, Diversity Disconnect, the Importance of Ethnicity in the Classroom. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, so what is multiculturalism? What is diversity? And we've spent a lot of the semester in one of my classes discussing these elements, but one of the things that I've noticed is that when we were talking about diversity and celebrating diversity, we tended to focus a lot on the individual elements themselves. We talked about race, about physical ability, and things like religion, and how all of those elements impact the classroom. But as I was thinking about those things, I realized that I felt that something was being lost. And so as I began to think more and more and explore this, I realized that what was happening is we were looking at diversity and human experience through these microscopic lenses, and we were focusing on individual elements of what I felt was a bigger picture. And I think this is a good thing, and that it helps us really explore and analyze these elements. But I think something can be lost if we don't realize the collective whole in which they exist. And as I was continuing to explore this, I came across a paper by researchers Linda Charmarman and Jennifer Grossman titled The Importance of Race Ethnicity, an Exploration of Asian, Black, Latino, and Multiracial Adolescent Identity. And it helped me realize something, and this is kind of the main point of my talk tonight. But if we are thinking about promoting diversity, and if we see diversity and multicultural celebration and inclusion as an important element in our society, I believe as educators it starts with us today, and that having a diverse, multicultural environment for which students can explore and understand their collective human experiences, I think that having that in our classroom is essential if we see that as something that we desire in a society today. And that's going to be the charge of my talk today, which is that we need to look at diversity and multiculturalism through a broader lens and a more macroscopic lens in order to understand just how those implications will impact our classroom. And so as I continue to explore this, I ran across another paper, and one that I want to cite because I think it's really important. It's by Professor Barbara Gross Davis of the University of California, Berkeley. And she published a paper on diversity and complexity in the classroom, considerations of race, ethnicity, and gender. And one of the things that she talks a lot about in this paper is the importance of educating ourselves as educators about these different kinds of groups, ensuring we're using inclusive language, and ensuring that we're getting a full picture of where our students' experiences are coming from. And that's kind of what sparked a lot about this discussion tonight. And so I wanted to give you some background. So I want to give you some background of how we think about these things in our nation, give you a model for how we can think about diversity moving forward, and talk about some of the implications of looking at our diverse classroom experiences through this model. So in the past, a lot of what I've mentioned, we think about diversity in terms of a lot of these individual elements. We think of celebrating race, or we think of celebrating religion, or so on and so forth. And often when we do this, we try to highlight voices of the minority culture in order to try to bring those to light and celebrate those. But what ends up happening sometimes is we tend to turn to maybe that one student in our classroom who fits whatever model of diversity, that issue of diversity or element of diversity that we're exploring. We tend to fixate upon a student in our class who maybe in some ways we expect them to speak for the entirety of a community or a group of people based on their experiences. And I think sometimes this gives us a false perception of diversity and of other communities, and doesn't let us truly celebrate them and explore them and understand them as reflections upon our collective human experience. So take, for instance, you're having discussions with your class about race, and I'm going to highlight race because I feel like it's a very hotly contested and tenuous element of diversity that's we see being carried out in our nation as we're exploring what is race, and why is it important to highlight race as an element of, once again, I'm going to be saying this a lot, but an element of diversity. But say you're in a situation in which you have a student in your class. Let's say her name is Shanice. And let's say Shanice is black. And so you approach Shanice with wonderful intentions. And you walk up to Shanice and you say, Shanice, I know there's been a lot of tension about race throughout the nation. And I'm just wondering, how are you and your family doing? Once again, a very well-intentioned thing. And this is a way of understanding the racial component that our students may be experiencing as a part of their identity. But what happens if Shanice isn't from America? And Shanice says to you, I'm from Somalia, and in fact, you know, I know there's a lot of tensions in America about race relations, and in particular with the African American community, but I can't relate to those. Well, that's a problem, right? Because in the old way of thinking, we think about these elements and we say, well, race is a tension, and this student is of this race, therefore they must be experiencing this tension, they must be having these experiences. But the problem is we make an assumption there. And so I think when we look at these individual elements and we assume those things for those students, sometimes we can lead to these disconnects. And so that's kind of where we've been in the past, and what I want to do is highlight a model I think that helps us think about it. Because I think, in particular with race, our fixation upon race, which is, I think, a part of a bigger picture, which is something I'm going to call ethnicity, where ethnicity is your perceived kinsmanship. I'm going to say that race, our fixation as a nation upon race, is what's paternally racist, ultimately, about our nation's conception of identity and of diversity. Because the thing is race is one of the elements of ethnicity that we can't change. But there are many other elements to ethnicity that define our collective experience and our social identity. And so this is the model I want to give you today. So, like I said, one of the elements of ethnicity, which I think is a broader macro scale to understand our students' experiences, is race. And we can't remove race as an element in which we discuss and think about diversity. But race, I think, is really just one element of a broader picture. And I think when we start to understand that our students are trying to understand some of these social identities, that there's going to be tensions among them, and that tension is going to be their collective experience. And so asking questions to highlight that is where the meeting happens. So we have race. Another important part of ethnicity, though, is ancestry. And so ancestry is defined as a student's or an individual's heritage, where they come from, how, thinking of this in terms of their family, their lineage, where they, and they may find value in that and in that experience, and they may relate to that uniquely. But we also have other ones as well. We have language. And language is an important part of ethnicity because language is a way in which we connect and we experience life. We connect with individuals who speak the same language and may have similar kinds of regional dialects and communities that are formed around these languages. And so that's a part of our experience as we experience things socially. Another one, however, though, is religion. And religion is not just about an individual's beliefs and values. Those are a part of it. But even in a social sense, how those religious beliefs impact the society and how those help shape values and beliefs of the cultures and communities around. And last but not least, we have a very important part, which is nationality, citizenship. And so nationality is another part of, I think, this picture of diversity, because nationality is where someone calls home. It's the nation they call home. And so there may be students who are experiencing tension with any one of these. Take nationality, for instance, where they may feel binational. They may feel that they are, for instance, going back to our student earlier, Shanice, maybe Shanice really identifies as still being Somalian. Maybe she's binational and she feels both Somalian or American as well. Or a student in your classroom who maybe was born and raised, maybe a very relevant example might be in Mexico or in a Latin American country, and they come to the United States when they're very young. Well, we can't make assumptions about that student's identity as it relates to their nationality because they may consider themselves to be fully American. But they may also consider themselves to have elements of their ancestry may impact the way that they perceive their nationality as well. And so there's tensions among all these. And the reason I bring this up, so this space here in the middle is where ethnicity is. And it's the reason this is important is it really lets us recognize that these complex interactions and these complex social identities all create these experiences that our students will have. And so that's kind of a model I think that can help us think about when we're engaging in diversity in our classroom and trying to promote diverse discussions. How well are we doing at highlighting all of these elements? Are we focusing more on one than another? And what's lost when we do? Because I think that if we're focusing just on one element, whether it be someone's race, which is fixed, unchangeable, or even someone's ancestry, the other fixed and unchangeable, we might be missing things in their collective experience as it relates to their religion, their nationality, and their languages, and how all of those intersect. And so I think this model provides us a better picture to understand diversity by letting students see how their experiences are impacted by the interconnections of all of these elements of social identity. And so with those laid out, so we've talked about in the past and we've talked about a model here, I want to give one more little bit of thought before we leave. And so it's, what are the implications for your classroom today? And so here's the reason I think considering ethnicity. I've mentioned a few ways that it's going to impact your classroom, but I think another way is this. It removes the grounds for assumptions. When we're focused on just one element of ethnicity, when we're focused on one element of our students' identity and one element of their identity as it relates to society, I think we're missing the larger picture of who they are in terms of their experiences and what they've gone through. And I think in some sense we try to categorize their experiences within these boxes, instead of letting their experiences be seen within a tension among these different domains. And so by doing so, you actually enable students to be more confident in exploring and understanding who they are, and in understanding how their experiences relate to them, understanding how their ancestry impacts the way they think about their nationality, or how their religion impacts the way they think about their race and their language, and how those all interrelate. And so that's what I've got for you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really encourage you, once again, just to summarize, that in the past we've talked a lot about individual elements of diversity, but I think there really is that need for that larger collective picture that's provided by ethnicity. And I think that by implementing these into your classroom, you're going to find that students are going to be more able to relate to their experiences rather than less, and that engagement and collective student experiences, as they intermingle, they'll be able to find more and more overlaps and be able to understand where differences may arise as they relate to these various domains instead of one particular attribute. And so that's what I've got for you today. I really encourage you as educators, go out there, let's be the positive change we want for this world, and let's do everything we can to think about how we can be even more inclusive with our models and thinking about diversity itself in order to ensure that minority voices of all cultures and all communities are not just highlighted, but are celebrated among the majority cultures as well, and that we're able to see our collective experiences come together to make something beautiful. So thank you so much. That's my talk for the day. Have a great one.